That looks like Rhode Island behind us.
It sure does. Unfortunately, it's not quite open ocean in front of us yet. Still have a little ways to go to get out of Rhode Island, but it's leaving day. Finally. We've been in Rhode Island for far too long, if I'm being honest, but we have done so many projects. Like Starry Horizons, she's in pretty good shape now. I'm really happy with what we've done. But it's getting cold, so it's time to go. Unfortunately, it's just a bit too late in the year, it seems, to find a good weather window to get all the way to Bermuda. So we're gonna leave for the exotic location of New Jersey. Sorry to anyone from New Jersey, but let's be honest, it's New Jersey. So at least it's movement. We're on the way. We're gonna be kind of hopping along the coast south to try to find an easier spot to cross the Gulf Stream. But we're on the way, and that feels so good. First thing we gotta do is test out the main, because I tested the general on the way over here, but want to make sure everything's rigged up appropriately before we actually get out in the ocean. We'll do that while we're here still in the bay. Passed the first test. The main looks good. I even got the preventer on it, so I think that was the thing I was most worried about. But now it's time for the next test. That's getting the general out. Let's do that. It feels so good to be sailing again. I think Starry Horizons is really enjoying it too. She's doing between like 8 and 9 knots. Got a gorgeous sunset out here. It is a bit bumpy. I think poor Amy is not quite got her sea legs back, so she's down with her eyes closed for a little bit, but that's fine. I can handle this to start out. But we're looking so good. It feels, I just can't say it enough. It feels so good to be out sailing again rather than just working on projects. We've got the hydro generator down, so that's working well. Sails are up. She's looking good. New Jersey, here we come. It was an epically beautiful night to leave Rhode Island. The air was cold and crisp. The colors in the sky were incredibly vivid, and we watched the sunset right behind Block Island. We were departing at the end of November, and weather windows that time of year were short. The window we'd chosen would have us sailing upwind along the coast of Long Island. Conditions were quite uncomfortable, so we were happy to pull into the Monasquan Inlet just after daybreak and right before the wind shifted even further to the west.
You are all strapped in.
Yeah, and we're not out at sea anymore. We had a very quick overnight. It was super rough. This was probably a much better decision to do this jumping down the coast and going to Bermuda, because this is kind of like a shakedown, and we definitely discovered a few things wrong. The biggest, our radar's not working, so I'm gonna take advantage of a nice calm day today, go up, check that out. Of course, the radar had worked when I tested it in the yard. I'd done some troubleshooting at sea, but had no luck with a fix. Further testing would have required me to go up the mast, and while I've gone up the mast at sea several times before, it's perhaps my least favorite thing I've ever done on Starry Horizons. It was far better to survive one night without radar and take advantage of our quick stay in a marina. When I was attempting to troubleshoot this last night on passage, I noticed that when I connected the radar down at the junction box where all the wires go up the mast, the voltage in the wires dropped a lot, which made me think someone's probably wrong up the connection at the radar. So going up there, and I think I used the wrong product. So I used a bunch of Tef Gel to make sure the connections didn't get stuck, but apparently Tef Gel acts as like an insulator for electrical stuff, so oops. Clean that up with some mineral spirits, come back down, the voltage looks better, so let me turn on the instruments, and if I have any luck at all, yes, that's a radar working. So we'll definitely test that a few more times just to get a little more confidence in it, but definitely want that while we're headed offshore for sure. The other thing that I took care of while I was up there, I noticed that I think the set screws for our loud hailer and the foghorn just they were a little loose, and so it was moving around a bit while we were on passage. So I tightened those up, so that should now be all good. There's one more thing that I'm going to take care of while we are here in the marina before we depart again. And that fix is down here in my favorite locker on the boat at the moment. I noticed when we were running the water maker that there was a little bit of water that had kind of leaked in here. Now I know it's super cold, so there's a lot of condensation, but kind of like this pea gasket. I'm not 100% sure what the name is, but it's old. I'm a little worried that it's getting flat. It's just not quite as good at sealing this compartment anymore. I did buy some spares while we were in Rhode Island, just never quite got around to actually getting them in. But if we're getting ready to go offshore and some more big waves crashing up, which we definitely had last night, I want to get that fixed. So let's get that taken care of. This wasn't a super complicated job. Clean up the underside of the hatch, mark where the old gasket had sat, undo a lot of screws, remove the old gasket, and then finally put the new seal in place. It had some sticky tape, which certainly helped, and I did my best to reuse the screw holes. After getting all the way around, we did a quick check with me in the locker, and I felt much more comfortable about heading offshore. We did not stay long in New Jersey at all, basically 1.5 nights, because we got up at 3:30 this morning to get underway again. Basically, got a few projects done, waited for a southerly wind to blow through, wind clocked around to the west, and we're gone. Unfortunately, it is stupid cold outside. Let me show you. Hopefully this will come out. I think it feels like 36, or no, air temperature is 36. It feels like 25 degrees outside, and on the water with the wind howling on a boat just feels even worse outside. So sitting outside the enclosure can be done, but it's not great. So that's why I'm inside. We actually have one of our new Mabru air cons running at the moment. It is not keeping it super toasty just because this boat is not insulated at all, but it's bearable. So it's glorious, and we're sailing south. So hopefully those weather numbers or temperature numbers at least, will start going up soon. Our plan for this jump was to head into Norfolk, Virginia. There we could wait for a good window to get across the Gulf Stream, or at least continue our way south along the coast. But one thing we've learned about passage making is that if an opportunity to go materializes, you'd better take it. Back there somewhere is Norfolk, and bye-bye. We decided not to stop. We were doing our last jump down at the coast, going from New Jersey down to Norfolk, and I decided, let's take one last look at the weather, because I had full intentions of pulling in. We went in, we're in Little Creek last year, really enjoyed it. We're gonna go back, waiting for a weather window to get down to the Bahamas. But looking one last time, there's a window. And it's gonna be a bit rough getting across the Gulf Stream. We're gonna have to wait a little bit for the northerly winds to fill back in and get us to go south. But we're so tired of the cold. Just not the experience we want on our boat. Crazy people go up to like Svalbard or whatever it is up there. More power to you. We're looking for warm weather, so we're gonna go south. Probably not gonna film a lot getting across the Gulf Stream just because it's gonna be a bit rough. But what I am gonna be really interested in focusing on this passage is just all the changes that we've made on Starry Horizons. What's that gonna do for our power generation, power consumption, all of those things. So I'll come back and talk about that later. Amy's downstairs napping right now, so I figured this might be a really good time to kind of wander up here and let's talk about kind of power generation with all the changes we've made on the boat. Perhaps the biggest challenge that we face trying to generate power on this passage in particular is the fact that we're going southbound in the northern hemisphere. That means that the sun is in front of us almost the entire day. And right now we're on a very deep reach, so we've got the sails are all over on the starboard side of the boat. But there's still quite a lot of shade that shows up on the solar panels themselves, which is challenging for consistent output. It comes and goes as kind of the sun peaks around behind the mast. But this morning was really, really good. We had quite a lot, over a kilowatt of solar. I didn't capture that, of course. So that was very helpful. We started running the water maker at that time. So we're getting pretty close to topped on water. We are going to have to go back to wing on wing though, which makes even more shade on the solar panels. So that's why we rely on our other renewable power generation source. The other source, of course, is The hydro generator still down there, and that just cranks away 24/7. It's fantastic to have that just constantly generating power for us. It is extremely variable sometimes based on how fast we're sailing. The biggest variable, I suppose. And right now, because we're on such a deep reach, we're going a bit slow. So we have a couple different propellers. I have put on the largest one at the moment, so that's still generating a decent amount of power for us. The big issue right now is just with the water maker going, we're sucking down a lot of power. But we haven't run an engine in like 2.5, 3 days, and the batteries are still above 70%, which is so impressive. I just turned the water maker off, and immediately we're back into production mode. The water maker is a big draw. It's like 400 watts, so that's 33-ish amps at our 12-volt system. So when that's off, we're now putting power back into the batteries at a pretty decent clip. And it's not like we're running a pretty bare bones ship right now. I mean, fridge is on, freezer is on, all the electronics are on, autopilot's on, radar's on, Starlink is running at the moment. So we're still using a good amount of power, but we're still generating a lot, which is just so impressive to me, and very different from kind of how our phases of the boat's set up, which I figure I might be talking to you for a little bit, but hopefully you might find this interesting. The very first way we had the boat set up, which was no hydro generator, the 1,000 watts of our solar, and then generator for running the water maker, we could go a day and a half, 2 days on passage, depending on how sunny it was, before we had to run something to charge up the batteries. Usually the generator, run an engine for a little while. So that's not a lot, and required a lot of extra diesel usage while we were on passage. So when we were in South Africa, added the hydro generator. That got us up to about 4 days between when we would have to charge the batteries using the generator or an engine. But that was okay, because then we could generally run the water maker at the same time we were running the generator. So it worked out just fine for the last big passages that we had. But this one, we just ran the water maker, and we're still net positive on energy for the day, which is just so incredibly mind-blowing to me. And we're in like the worst conditioned passage for solar generation, with the sails blocking the sun and the sun way to the south of us. So I am so excited to see what a change this is going to make for us when we get down to the Bahamas. It would feel pretty unnatural to be out here on passage and not give at least some sort of sailing update. So we are definitely in the downwind phase of the passage, getting through the Gulf Stream. That was rough. But we have been sailing deep, deep downwind and not quite getting the angle we wanted to get towards Georgetown. So we've done one of our favorite tricks. We've pulled the Screecher over to the windward bow. Have it rigged up all the way around, come to this side, all the way back. We've got preventer on the main, nice new main, full main up. So this is working out quite well. It allows us to sail really deep. Like, we've got a wind vane of 150 degrees apparent right now, which is fantastic. Also, it's moved the sun over just a little bit. The solar is just cranking out power right now, and honestly I enjoy just sitting here watching it, because I get to see like 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 kilowatts of solar being generated while we're in the middle of the ocean. It's really, really impressive. Actually kind of freaked out our hydro generator a little bit, because the solar power is putting enough voltage in that is raising the voltage of the batteries, and the hydro generator was like, oh, we must be in absorption mode, so I don't have to produce as much. So I had to pull the hydro generator up, but I don't care, because as long as the solar is putting out a bunch of power for us, the battery's getting charged, which is just fantastic. One other thing that I know a lot of people have been interested in is Starlink, especially how it's working out in the middle of the ocean. We've got it mounted up here, kind of on the coach roof at the moment. We've been moving it around various places on the boat, trying to find the place where it's got the best view of the sky. And I have been so surprised about how well it's working. Honestly, I was not expecting it to work at all on this passage, but it has. It hasn't been 100%. There have definitely been times where it's lost signal. We've had to reboot the router a couple times, but it's hard to explain just how magical it is to have internet out in the middle of the ocean. Like, we've spent almost a decade of passage making where the best we've had is an Iridium Go. And that's like text-based emails. It takes like 30 minutes to download weather. And the fact that I can watch the World Cup is just, it's mind-blowing to me. So I'm not expecting, or I should say, I really don't know how well it's gonna work the entire season. Still like lots changing and whatnot. But I mean, this passage is proven like this is pretty amazing. Now, we've had a lot of people also ask, like, how have you mounted it? Where is it permanently installed yet? The answer to that is no, it's not permanently installed. Like I said, we've been moving it around quite a bit, trying to figure out where it gets the best view. We have a rail mount. We've actually got it from an Etsy store. I'll put a link to that down in the description if y'all are interested. But for now, I mean, it's fantastic. So really hoping it kind of keeps up the same way in the Bahamas. I have to do another quick update because my mind is kind of blown again on this passage. The batteries are now up at about 94%. I had to go back and look, but overnight they were down around like 67, 68. So that's almost 30% the solar has been pumping in today. It's so incredibly different from what we've done on Passage before. Like I set out with all the changes, hoping that we'd get almost energy independence while we're at anchor, and I think I might have almost stumbled into it while we're on Passage as well. That's pretty awesome. With all the changes we'd made, Starry Horizons was practically a new boat, and with that came a period of rebuilding trust. So it was a big relief to see her pass this new test with flying colors, and we could start to feel like we hadn't screwed things up too badly during the refit. We still had a few days of sailing ahead of us, but before long, the water turned neon blue, and it was time to raise the Q flag. That is the Bahamas.
Indeed it is, and it's so gorgeous.
Yeah, what we've been missing for sure. But I wanted to make sure everyone saw that you're still on the boat. I didn't like kick you off or anything.
I'm here. I have been here the whole time. I did not just magically fly in.
Yeah, just for the last little bit. Didn't have Jim's helicopter.
Right, yeah.
So how was the passage for you, babe?
I mean, it was rough. I think that it was mostly like the sea state was really washing machine for most of it.
Especially just from the start. I mean, we were anticipating going to Norfolk and then just went straight across the Gulf Stream. That whole first part was definitely a bit rough, but but we made it. We're here,
did.
So that feels good.
Yeah.
Now I've got a quick little summary for energy stuff. The last 5 days, ever since we got across the Gulf Stream, we didn't run an engine at all, except one or twice for hot water, I think. But all the solar, all the hydro generator provided consumption or the power for everything. I mean,
yeah. I would be going to bed and the battery at the end of the day, and the batteries were like 95%.
Yeah, and I mean, we were
awesome.
making water. I even ran the hot water heater a couple times when we had like excess solar. So I'm very, very pleased with how that new setup is working. And I gotta say, I'm excited to see how it's gonna work here in the Bahamas.
I know, it's awesome. And then what do we have coming up next?
We got some friends flying in for the holidays, but other than that, we gotta figure out what we want to do.
We got 6 months in the Bahamas, Georgetown, and the Raggeds.
And that's as far as we've got.
That's as far as our plans go.
Which is so nice.
Amazing.